Welcome to Chronicles from the Tabletop. I'm JR. We have Eric and Johnny over here.
Hey, stream.
Okay, Eric is part of the number 2 White Plains regional winning team.
I don't know how that happened, but it did.
Johnny is the destroyer of dreams. I don't know how he does it with a trial deck. I also don't know how he jumps over someone who beat him. But dreams were crushed that day. You'll be able to see. I don't think the TD is in-house.
No, unfortunately it's
So
not.
we can't have that. But dreams, like, it's the wounds are real.
Yeah.
There's still salt kind of hanging out on them. So what I'd like to do today is I'm going to give the floor to Eric, who's going to talk about his White Plains experience. We'll go from that, and he's going to tell us talk about how we suck and he doesn't.
Yeah, definitely.
I think he's going to show you his cool stuff. Then he'll do a quick deck tech at the climax of the deck tech. Haha, see what I did there?
Yeah.
We're going to get Johnny in, and they're going to play some games. At any point, if Johnny wants to tell you how he crushes dreams, we'll definitely give him the limelight. Because Cam, if you're in there, I know you have plenty of dreams, and Johnny has plenty of the ability to crush those dreams.
Yeah,
So, it's a difficult job. Somebody has to, though. Like, every group needs one person.
Yeah.
So
I guess
I
I'm that
think Johnny
person.
and I,
That's really sad.
I think Johnny and I will step out of frame. Johnny can continue to peek in a little bit. Eric's going solo, and he's going to talk about his experience at White Plains.
Okay, not a manwich anymore. So first, I don't know him. That was a terrible joke. You should feel bad. I feel like I need to talk about leading up to the event because I felt like that was as much work as actually playing in it. So for anybody who doesn't know my group, I went with Nick and Michelangelo. Nick played AOT. Michelangelo played Persona 5, and I went with SAO. The problem with SAO right now is we have something like 6 different sets with a whole bunch of cards, so I had a lot of testing to do before I could settle on a deck I was happy with. I'm still not actually sure, even after the event, that I picked the best available deck plan. I'm actually kind of sure that I didn't. I just spent a lot of time in testing in the weeks leading up to the event, trying to evaluate and decide what worked best for me. And I did eventually settle on one, but you have, in SAO right now, you have like 3 different first slot climax combos you can use. You have old school Yuki, you have Standby, which you've seen a bunch lately. It's starting to show up at the events, and one that you're not seeing quite as much, but I think has a lot of potential. You've got the 1/1 Yui combo with the stock soul to recur to your hand and build extra stock every turn. So you have those options, and then you have 3 finishing options too. You have old school Last Shot with Xenon, you have the switch combo, which shows up a lot in the Standby deck, and you have Link Strike. So it's 3 in one slot times C in the other, so quick math says you've got at least 9 viable deck plans. You could do any of those in SAO, and they kind of interact with each other differently. So I had a lot of work. Fortunately, I figured it out, something that just worked well for me. So that was exhausting, and I questioned my choices right up to the actual event, but things worked out well enough for us. I didn't really know what to expect going into the team format because this was the first one I participated in. It's the first one that I remember English having. There might have been one in the past, but if there was, it happened before I was in the game. But that said, I enjoyed the format a lot. There was something really rewarding about just those experiences where maybe one person was struggling and the other 2 teammates had a chance to pick them up and carry them through the round. I think I told my teammates during the event, we're kind of surviving our way through this. There weren't a lot of blowout rounds except for the early ones. Once we got into later matches, we started to see some real games and some real competition. So a lot of the rounds went 2-1 instead of 3-0. And overall, I thought that we played just well enough. We played just well enough to get just to where we needed to be. I'll explain. So it's probably better and easier if I just explain how round by round went, and you can understand by the end of it what I mean by when I say that we just survived it. So Round 1, I was paired against red Tolovru Aliens deck. Oh no, that was round 2. Round 1, let me back up. Round 1, why can't I, James, I can't think now. What do I do? I lost my mind. Oh no, round 1 was, I remember it now. So round 1 was Persona 5. It was a typical yellow-red deck with Joker switches. That went kind of normal. Yuki did Yuki things, compressed my deck. The Joker level 1 tried to do Joker things. It didn't matter a whole lot because I had a green-blue switch off. I was able to do that. If I didn't say so yet, I was playing the Yuki Link Strike. I'm fairly certain it's the first Link Strike that ranked in North America for this year's team format, so that was kind of cool. But anyway, so I was playing Yuki with some other blue cards to fill the gaps at level 1, so I was able to exploit the color weaknesses of the Joker. I think a problem that he had was he thought that the Mona counter at level 1, he thought that was splittable, and I had to explain that it wasn't. It wasn't like the Yuki, it wasn't like the Asuna level 1, the old school Weiss commander, that it lacks the text in battle when it says choose a character, so you can assign the 1k to the battling character and 1k to another. The Mona and most other counters, most other 2k counters don't have that flexibility. They specifically say to choose a character in battle to get the other 1k. You tried to tell me that he tried to tell me it was splittable and that he had checked it with the judge. I still wasn't buying it. He didn't contest it though when I explained that it didn't work that way, but he did want to see the Asuna out of my deck after the game was over so he could compare the text, and there wasn't a question after that, so I think he was good with it. But it was just kind of a confusing moment. It kind of cost him a bit at level 1 because he was counting on being able to use one backup to gain value in multiple lanes, and instead it only saved one character, and that kind of set him back a little bit. So I was able to take control of the game after the mid game. So round 2, that was so the group won round 1. I think all 3 of them won the round. So round 2, I went against a Tolovru Red Aliens deck. This was kind of a feel bad moment for my opponent. She had a blue card in a sea of red cards in her clock, and she was leveling up to level 1, and she chose the blue card even though the vast majority of the deck was red, and she wound up color locking herself at level 1. So she's at 1-0 and unable to play a lot of the red cards other than level 0s, so it set her back a whole turn, and it allowed me to get ahead on resources and damage, and she just wound up not recovering from that. So I don't know if it's easy to loot when, especially for a big event like this. It can be easy to just lose track of little info like that. I tell people at locals that I'm the color police. That's color specifically something that I'm watching for all the time during games, and she just wound up running into a problem on that one turn. Like she was able to fix it and play some red cards in the following turn, but by then there was a discrepancy in resources and damage. So. That game wound up working in my favor. The others won. So I forget if it was 3-0 or 2-1, but our team took that. So we were 2-0 at this point. Round 3 was our first feel bad moment. I played against Love Live Sunshine. I did expect to see a bunch of Love Live Sunshine at New York because it was a very strong set, and it got its new support 1 week before the New York event. So I was expecting to see a lot of the really competitive teams go for AOT, SAO, and Love Live Sunshine in no particular order. I think you could drop any of those 3 anywhere and have a good chance. I think there are some discrepancies in the strengths of those decks, but I don't think those discrepancies are so large that you can't put any of the 3 anywhere. So this game was great. I was immediately out something like 3 climaxes, and after my first couple of turns, I was out another couple of climaxes or so. So normally, with the Yuki deck, I'm normally not too worried about Sunshine's mid game, because if they're playing the Ruby combo, they can't really side profitably against Yukis that have gotten their bonus level off from using their combo. And Chica can't bomb them either if they go that route, but they can consider just crashing the rubies if they want to, just to push damage because they're playing a 2-soul on it. And I was out a lot of climaxes. I wound up falling behind in damage really quickly, and I wasn't able to stabilize from that. I think he actually won the game while he was still at level 2. That's how bad that one went for me. And there's some games that you just can't recover from, even if you make the right decisions to try to stabilize. Sometimes you just can't. Stabilization is... Sometimes it's kind of a myth in Weiss Schwarz. You can't bring a situation back a lot of the time unless the wheels start to fall off for the opponent. Sometimes when they gain an advantage, they just hold it, and that's what happened in my situation. My teammates also lost their game, so this is the first feel-bad moment for my team. All 3 of us lost. We dropped fortunately, when you lose a round, they don't ask by how many you lost. All that matters is that you lost. Like, we didn't get like bonus negative points for going 0-3. We just lost that round, so we were 2-1. Round 4, I'm not gonna lie, I actually don't remember who my opponent was. I know that AOT was up against our Persona 5 player, so the AOT was up against Michelangelo, and Nick would have to confirm. I think he was playing SAO, and I think I was playing against another Persona 5 deck. I feel like whenever I don't remember what a set is, it was probably Persona 5, because there was a lot of it out there. My game wasn't the interesting one. I did my usual stuff with Yuki and SAO and wound up taking that game. The interesting one was the one next to me. Like, I watched what was happening here. So, our guy Michelangelo, he was at the end game. This is when my game was over and I was able to start looking at it. So he was at 3-6. The opponent was playing AOT, and he was wrapping up his attacks with Mikasas. You know, the Mikasas that can pay 2 to burn 1 when they reverse a character. So I'm sitting there watching this game, and the opponent defeats his last character. He does his last of his 3 swings with a Mikasa. He reverses a battle opponent, and then he doesn't pay the 2 to burn for the last damage to win the game, and he ends turn. I don't think he knew exactly what the AOT cards did. I think he was newer to that deck. And after the game ended, because he didn't burn that, he didn't take the burn 1, Michelangelo got another turn. He took the game because it was close. His teammates wound up telling him that Mikasa could have burned. I think he felt really bad after that. I kind of felt bad watching the whole thing. I kind of felt bad on his behalf. That's not one that you want to live down or try to live down after it happens, but... so we kind of cheated death on that one. I don't remember if our AOT won that, but regardless, because we had 2 wins, we went up to 3-1. So round 5, I played. This was a team from the Midwest. It had Kit from Burn 1. And it had Nikolay and Dean. I hope I didn't butcher any of those names. They were cool guys. It was good to meet them. So I was up against Kit in lane A. He was playing his usual standby switch SAO deck. Now, standby switch, just to be clear, that this is one of the deck plans that I tested. I spent a good amount of time at locals trying to get comfortable with it and see if it would be something I would be happy with playing and bringing to New York. And I wound up deciding not to, because one of the issues I was consistently having with standby is that it had tempo problems, and by that I mean half of its climaxes don't push for soul. So it had some trouble sometimes pushing opponents or keeping up in damage. When I say it loses tempo, I mean like sometimes it has to start opening up lanes by defeating characters, so that it has open lanes to swing into to start going for 2 and so on. And I observed that very frequently with standby. I was falling behind in damage, and I don't know if that's just because of particular player habits. It could have been me and not the deck, because apparently other people are having good success with their standby decks. But it wasn't a plan for me. I wasn't happy with how it played, and I wound up settling on my Yugi Link Strike alternative. So one thing that I watch for, one thing that I try to exploit during that matchup is to try to gain a damage lead on standby, against standby, and to try to keep it. I was able to do that for the most part. At level 0, I had an interesting option. He had played a runner for turn 1, and I was looking at my hand, and I had triple clean cut in my hand, and I was asking myself at that moment, is it worth fielding all 3 of these to try to farm some value out of multiple swings? So no matter where the runner would go, I could reverse it. I could swing in an open lane first, then reverse the runner, move 1 to back row, and have a 3rd swing. But I decided that wasn't a good value play. I don't think it's ever worth it. barring extreme circumstances, I don't think it's usually worth fielding 3 cards to try to kill a runner, even if you are getting a virtual plus off of it. I thought that a more disciplined play would be to keep some cards in hand and try to set up for level 1. Because I knew I would have climaxes, I'd be able to play those, and I'd still be able to comfortably, I'd still be able to generate comfortable swings for 2 during the mid game, and I was able to open up a damage lead. Unfortunately for me, this is probably one of the worst moments I've ever had in an official Bushiroad event. So I was at 2-2. He had opened up some lanes, and he was swinging for absurd amounts of damage. He was going for, I think he played a climax in turn and tried to push open lanes. Because I saw, I don't remember exactly why he did it, but either he had perfect exit or he was paying really close. I don't know if he was just paying close attention to what was happening with my deck, or he thought, or if he was just trying to get a climax out of his hand or what. I didn't exactly show a flood at that moment because I had only a moderately sized deck with 6 or 7 climaxes in it. Nevertheless, he swings for 4, 5, 5, and it all sticks, and I just die from 2-2. When he saw the first 10 go in, he just commented something like, "If this goes in, it was meant to be." And then it did. And after the game ended on the spot there, I flipped over my deck and I showed him, and 6 of the next 8 cards were all climaxes. So it's just like, yep, this is fine. This is fine. Burning House meme goes here. Our team didn't win that round. We wound up going to 3-2, and we thought that our day might be over. Because we weren't expecting a round 6. People around us were talking about it like it was the last round, and we thought based on the team size, there were 43 teams for the New York event, so we thought that was going to be it. And then, surprise, surprise, we had a round 6. Nobody was expecting a round 6, but apparently there were still 2 undefeated, so we had a round 6. So we were just looking at ourselves like, hey, if we win this, we might have a chance to squeak in. We might be able to reach top 8 if we take this game. So I wound up against another standby opponent, and this time, this was a feels bad from me and not from my deck's ability to not cancel when it's supposed to. So I kind of cost myself this one. I was at 0-4, and he got a standby off for a Silica in the middle lane. He was just swinging, he wanted to just swing with one character, and I had a runner. I had a choice as to whether to block the runner and prevent 1 damage and basically just go to 0-5, or let the open lane hunt me to 0-6 and then clock myself to level 1 and respond to the Silica. And I should have, at that moment, thought about the option of just not running with the runner and letting the 2 go in and then going to level 1, because I had a Yuki in hand and I had the bar, and he didn't have 3 or more characters on the board, so the Silica didn't have its bonus 1500 power in hand on core. I probably could have punished it, and I should have been paying attention to that moment, but instead I hit on the runner, I blocked the lane, I stayed at level 0 an extra turn, he kept his Silica for that turn. So that was honestly a misplay on my part, and I felt like I let my team down by doing that, because he was severely flooded. Or at least he started to show a flood after his next turn at level 1 when he had the Silica to attack with. He got to attack with it for the first time after using the standby. So I kind of missed an opportunity to take control of the game. I'm pretty sure I could have if I had played the Yuki and the bar. And allowed myself go to 0-6. Nevertheless, I still had a chance to to seize control of the game at the very end, because I had a difficult decision to make. But what I wound up doing with the link combo, and I had to do because I was limited somewhat on stock, because I kind of skipped some. I skipped some canceling too because I kind of answered his flood with a bit of a flood on my own, so I didn't have enough time to build resources for level 3, so I was kind of hamstrung on what I could do. I had a board set up where I was trying to do one link strike combo with a Kirito, and I was trying to get off a Xenon restand in another lane. That was going to be, if I wanted to get enough attacks to finish him off, I was going to need the restand to hit, not only so that I could swing again with the Xenon, but so that I would have 3 stock on the second to last attack to swap out the Kirito. So I was at that moment, before I started those attacks, I was at 2 climaxes in 6 cards in my deck, and I thought I had an above average chance to get the restand off. Of course, the very first swing was a gold bar, and it blind stalked the other climax right off the top. So I went from 2 and 6 to 0 and 4. The restandard no longer had the ability to restand because there was no climax left in the deck. So not only did I not get the restand, I didn't even get the swap off with Kirito to generate another attacker. So I wound up losing that game. And I can't blame the deck, even though that was a bad luck moment at the end, because I should have played better early. I told him afterward, like, because he was interested in knowing what I was trying to set up, and I explained the setup to him and what I was going for. And I told him the attacks and the sizes that I was swinging for, because the swap was going to be Elizabeth that came in and tried to burn for 1 as well. So I just mentioned the series of attacks I was going to swing and throw at him if the plan had worked, and he had told me, yeah, that would have killed me if you got it off. So part of me wanted to not know that. Fortunately, this is a moment where my teammates bailed me out. Michelangelo won with P5, Nick won with AOT, so we still took that round. So I got carried round 6. For anybody counting, I'm 3-3 with my Yuki Link Strike deck so far. What a scrub. Fortunately, I saved all my good games for the top cut. So we were waiting after round 6 to find out if we were going to get in. And we wound up taking 8th. We were right there. We were the last slot to squeak in at 4-2 with a team record. I think this is when we started telling ourselves, yeah, we just survived that, because a lot of our rounds were 2-1 victories and not 3-0. And it very easily could have gone the other way if things didn't go right. We could have very easily finished with a 3-3 team record and not 4-2, and we could have been on the outside looking in, but we made it through. We all passed our jack checks, yay. I think the Japanese format trained us to not be bad at writing out deck lists. For anybody who hasn't been around the game a long time, the Japanese side, I think, is much more stringent in how deck lists need to be written. You can be failed for all sorts of really tiny errors on a Japanese deck list. But English, more often than not, if you make a mistake, like our experience, or at least from second-hand information, we hear that more often than not you can fix a list if it's not right. I don't know I think I remember one instance of a guy in 1 year bringing an 11 climax deck to an event, and I think that failed. But I think it's pretty hard to fail an English deck check. I don't know of many instances where it's happened. So we got in our top 8 match. I was playing against Konosuba. I did not expect to see any Konosuba there, just not because it's not a good set. I respect Konosuba and I play it a lot at locals in Japanese, but it's just the rarity of Konosuba. It's hard to find in English. It was basically short printed. I don't know if we're gonna see any more of it, even with Konosuba 2 slated to be released later on. Bushiroad, please reprint Konosuba so that English players can enjoy that set. It's a good set. It deserves to be played more. So I knew what to expect with the English format Konosuba deck, because it tries to ride darknesses, the darkness early play that can gain hexproof and 4,000 power to itself or another character on the backswing. English, by and large, has difficult. The English format, just comparison between Japanese and English, Japanese features many more early plays typically than English does. Many English decks have a tough time answering multiple early plays at level 2, and Konosuba tries to exploit that by playing a bunch of darknesses. It does have access to the Eris restands, but it tends to not build specifically around just doing those. It tries to farm some advantage out of playing darknesses and keeping them on the board. So I knew that matchup, and I play the Kirito 2-1 anti-early play bottom decker. I play that card on offense because I thought I was going to need it, not necessarily for Konosuba, but I was expecting to see a lot of Love Live Sunshine, and I knew I was going to need a bottom decker to respond to their double early play level 2, which I expected every single opponent to get off. But it wound up being really good against the darknesses. It was able to bottom deck one, and it cost him 2 stock because he needed to replace that character, and he didn't have many options, and he was trying to maintain darknesses on the board. So when one went, it forced him to spend 2 stock to play another darkness, and that mattered later in the game because he didn't. On my last series of attacks, when I was going for game, he only had 3 stock, which meant he was only able to burn once off of one of the darknesses. By taking damage, it didn't cancel. The darkness wants to pay 2 and discard 1 to burn for equal amount of damage when the damage in that lane's not canceled. He got that off. He actually got that off of me. I was swinging at 3-2, and it got that. I stuck a 3 on him, and he successfully burned with darkness to get me to 3-5, which actually surprised me a bit because I had good compression in my deck. I wasn't expecting a 3 to go through, but it did. But that was the only darkness burn that he had stock for in the backswing. And in the meantime, I had just set up a small army of Lisbeths that burn 1 by discarding 2. So I was just generating a whole line of attacks for 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. It just, even though we had some compression in his deck, Lisbeth just magically danced around a bunch of it and eventually stuck him for lethal on the turn. I think he went from, I forget if he was 3-0 or 3-1, but Lisbeth actually just finished him off entirely just by magically sticking the right amount of damage in the right spots. Lisbeth Burn one was honestly my MVP for the top 8 and top 4 matches. Spoilers. So yeah, top 4. I'm sorry, I should back up before I go on to that. Top 8. So Nick won with AOT. I think Michelangelo dropped his game with P5, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter at that point. We had 2 wins. We were moving on to the top 4 match. So top 4, I finally saw my first dreaded AOT opponent of the day, and he was playing, of course, the meta build with the Aaron level 1 and the Mikasa level 3, because what else are you going to build in AOT in English right now? Seriously. So a particular concession that the Yuki SAO deck makes is that it doesn't really try to stop the AOT opponent from getting off the Aaron combo. It kind of just tries to plus itself with the Yuki combo, and then it just tries to challenge the AOT opponent to sort of a compression game that, depending on how well things go for the AOT player controlling climaxes, maybe you end up gaining a bit of an edge because Yuki is really good at maintaining clean stock and just controlling where your climaxes go. So you're trying to exploit that kind of an edge against AOT with a Yuki deck instead of just walling them out entirely with something like Standby. The game went pretty evenly, as I kind of expect. When I play against AOT with a Yuki deck, I don't really expect most of the time to gain a huge lead. I expect it to be pretty close, and I kind of expect them to be squeakers at the end. The key moment in that game was he was at something like 2-5, and I was swinging with I was just crashing, or quote-unquote crashing a bunch of weenies, because I was trying to just conserve stock for several link combos the next turn. And of course he was gonna play off the events to prevent me from crashing and make sure that he had targets on the board for the Mikasas to farm additional burn 1s on the backswing when he hits level 3. There was just one problem with that strategy, which was I looked at his clock while I was doing this, and he was showing 2 of his Mikasa level 3s stuck in clock already. So I tried to crash my first, quote-unquote, tried to crash my first level 0. He, of course, played his event, and then he looked through his deck for the Mikasa that he wanted to search. There's no Mikasa left in his deck. So he wound up not having a sufficient Mikasa army at level 3 to try to finish me off. I think he had 1 Mikasa, but that wasn't enough to put me in a bad spot, and I wound up once again just lining up a bunch of Lisbeths. I'm pretty sure my ending board looked something like 3 Lisbeths that all tried to do burns. It was kind of sick. Again, Lisbeth MVP. So I took that. Nick, again, won his game over on his side. P5 lost, I think. Again, I felt kind of bad for Michelangelo. I think he was having a tough time, but I still couldn't say anything because he bailed me out round 6, and he was part of the reason I was even there to begin with, to try to do stuff on top table. So shout out Mike. So we took that, and so by some miracle of God, here we are at the final match against the Midwest team again with Kit, Nikolai, and Dean. So I think Kit and I both kind of knew what to expect, other than the savage part where I ate 14 and died mercilessly in round 5. So this game went kind of similarly, but maybe not. I think it was more different for him than it was for me. I did not see triple clean cut in my hand this time, and that wasn't even an option to try to do it. I did have a clean cut that I wound up playing later on at level 1, but I kind of just treaded water early. I got to do a Yuki combo at level 1. One really nice thing about the Yuki deck now in tandem with the Amagi we have at level 0 is it takes some of the stress off to try to get double Yuki in your hand at level 2. Sometimes now you can just Amagi and do 1 Yuki instead, and you don't get quite as much compression benefit. Which is a reason to play Yuki. You do want to try to compress your first deck. Like that is supposed to be a highlight of playing it, but Amagi's there to bail you out if for some reason you don't get an army of Yukis in your hand in time for level 1, so you can still get some pluses. So I got that off. Because I saw I was kind of flooded out, I was out 6 climaxes pretty early, but because I was playing a standby opponent, he wasn't really punishing my flood until it was too late. Kind of a key moment was I was getting close to refreshing my deck. I was at, I think, 1-2, and I had 2 climaxes left in 10 cards. I had a Kiruto Rise effect that I milled on the backswing, and it unfortunately ate one. I think it ate... No, I don't think it ate a climax, but anyway, I'm not going to worry about the details before that, but it left me at 2 climaxes and 10 cards. He had... I just crashed the Kiruto because I wanted to do a mill, because of the flood. I didn't feel bad about doing that at all, but my other lane was... I had a clean cut that was going to try to reverse a runner. I wasn't really too worried about actually getting that effect off. It was just kind of a bonus that I had a chance to go for if he happened to not have a counter in his hand. And if he had a counter in his hand to stop it from going off against the runner, then I still didn't feel bad, because it meant that was a counter he wasn't going to have in his hand for later on when I was trying to swing into characters that were more valuable. One issue that I know with standby is that it doesn't always, unless it's playing off the 1-0 bombs, the 1-0 red bombs to discard climaxes and grab characters from waiting room. Beyond that, it's not really that adept at recurring cards. So I felt like if I could get if he had a counter and I got it out of his hand, then I was going to be less worried later in the game. And it did pay off later, but he did counter that clean cut effect so that I couldn't rest one of the other characters and move it to the back row. So it basically denied me a plus, but again, I wasn't really going for it. It was just a situation where I had a chance to try and just call the bluff on a counter. But it meant that I had 2 open lanes on his backswing, and he was going to try to punish my flood, because again, I was 2 and 10. He had a climax, he had a blue gate climax to play off. So it meant he was swinging for 3, 4, and 2. And as soon as I kind of thought that play might have been a bit greedy. I thought that as soon as I looked and I knew that the numbers that were going to be swinging in were 3, 4, and 2, and that meant I was going to be seeing up to 9 cards out of 10, with 2 of them being climaxes. I felt pretty good about seeing both climaxes come up on those swings. What I didn't expect was to actually perfect cancel the first 2 of them. That was a bit sacky. And it gave me a chance to go into my next deck with, with some half decent compression. The next turn where I was able to swing into his characters again, because that counter wasn't there, and I had a Yuki. I had another Yuki to play, and if I'm remembering these details correctly, maybe I'll watch a video later, and if Bushiroad posts it, maybe I don't know if we'll get a video, but I need to watch through some of these details again because I've lost some of them by now. But I do remember one of the following turns I was able to burst over a couple of level 1s, and the counter wasn't there to save them that time. So this time I was able to basically maintain a damage lead and keep it. One of the key moments was when he was going to his first refresh, I checked the waiting room and I saw that only 5 climaxes were there. And I knew at that moment that if I kept recurring, or if I kept supplying myself with climaxes somehow, which a Yuki deck is good at doing because all 8 of its climaxes put more climaxes in your hand. So Like my thought process for the game at that point was don't even worry about holding board anymore. Just push as much damage as you can because that deck is in trouble. And it wound up paying off. I maintained my damage lead through level 2 into level 3. Level 3, he did eventually catch up and actually take a small lead at level 3. He was at 3-0, I think, and I had just squeaked up to 3-2. So I had to, but he still was in some climax trouble. So I had a choice to make. I could double heal with 2 Lisbeths, the Lisbeth early play healers, which at that point I didn't want to play as. It didn't matter that they were early plays anymore; they were just healers. So I had a chance to take away 2. That 2 damage and go back to 3-0, or I could play a Link Strike Kirito and also a Lisbeth, and then change into as I swing with those attacks, change the Kirito into another Lisbeth and just try to generate more instances of burn. But I felt at that moment that I had good compression at that moment, and I felt good about my prospects if I had to try to live one more turn, healing down to 3-0. So I went ahead and did that, and the attacks and the last turn wound up working out a little better than I expected because I was swinging for 3 in all the lanes, and 2 of the 3 stuck, and he had a refresh point, so he just went from 3-0 to dead. So I was able to take that game, exact a small amount of revenge for rudely eating 14 earlier, but again, Kit was a good guy. It was good to meet him in person. It was a pleasure playing his team. My opponents are... the other 2 lanes, unfortunately, my teammates didn't win those. Nick was really close to winning with the AOT game. Like, my understanding of it secondhand was that he was basically like one draw. Like the opponent was 1 draw off the top of his AOT deck and being able from possibly missing the ability to finish him off because Nick had a bunch of Mikasas and he was just the opponent was at 3-6 and Nick was waiting for a chance to burn 1 on any of the lanes and try to take the game there. But unfortunately, the opponent got a climax, got the ability to swing, I think it was for 3, and got Nick from 3-4 to dead, so he didn't have a chance to burn. So we were that close. We were that close to topping somehow after just surviving Swiss. So I can't be disappointed. It was a great day for us. It started out not looking like a great day, but Weiss has a way of surprising you in good ways. You play for both the good and the bad moments in Weiss. Sometimes you get the good moments on a big stage, so it felt really good. It felt rewarding. It felt like a reward for all the work that went into prepping. Because again, there were so many ways I could have gone with SAO.
Is that Nick?
Is it?
I think it might be.
Is it?
Actually, I think that might be Nick.
So Nick, I believe, is saying that he didn't draw a climax, but that the game was awful. His game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't get to see. He was on the opposite side from me, so I didn't get to see it that closely. But my understanding from listening to Dean describe his game was Nick was really close to taking that, and it came down to a lucky draw on Dean's side. Like he got exactly the right card that he needed at the very end.
I don't know how the AOT works, but
my only understanding is the AOT matchup is really miserable for both people.
Because
AOT counters AOT.
I think he drew 1, and that he drew the climax.
Yeah.
Out of all the cards he had, I was just like, no, it's over.
I don't know how to put this. I didn't feel bad that. I felt a bit bad that we lost. I didn't feel bad that they won because they were good guys and they certainly worked. They certainly worked hard for it. We made them work hard and they answered the challenge. So hats off to them. But yeah, that said, for my part of second place, it felt good taking second. I don't care if people want to call it first loser. It's a lot more than I walked in with on the day. And I was really down on myself all the rounds of Swiss, or just all the. I had some pretty bad beats at locals about solidly the last month leading up to this, and I was kind of actually starting to question whether I regressed as a player. So I bounced back like this at a big Bushiroad event and to respond like that, and even win all 3 of my top cut matches. That felt really good. It felt like a reward for spending all the time testing the deck.
No, not for nothing, and I mean, I know I'm off camera here, but...
It's fine. The voice off the camera.
I mean, Battlegrounds really represented, everyone kind of did everything they did. We got together beforehand. you know, props to the community that you guys have all participated in and helped build and welcomed, you know, people like myself into.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone went in there. We had a good attitude. None of us were that douche leading his girlfriend around by a leash.
Oh wow.
So I mean, that was good.
I'm not gonna go there.
So that was good. None of us was them.
Yeah.
But I think we're gonna cut from this. I'm gonna go to the overhead if you want to show like some of your.
Yeah.
Some of the.
We can show
trophy
some of the. We can show some of the items, and I did promise James a little bit of exclusive content as well, and by that I mean a